Hey, fishy people. I had a request to go over how I keep my systems, so I'm going to do that real quick. And I would say the big message when it comes to me and my systems is the whole KISS philosophy. Keep it simple, stupid, you know? Or keep it stupid, simple. Anyways, keep it simple, you know? And I'm a big believer in that. Consistency is key, and you want things to be stable. And if things are stable, things will survive. You know, you might not get ideal growth rates, but everything's going to live, everything's going to look good, everything will be fine. You're not going to get sickness, you're not going to get disease. You know, if you're stable, you're good. So I'm not super high tech. I'm pretty low tech when it comes to everything, and I'm actually very, very cheap. If I had all the money in the world, I'd do things differently, and I'll go over some of that. But I keep things very simple. So this tank, I'll go over this tank first. I've got a spray bar that goes like this in an L. That's my return. That's keeping most of my detritus under this tank. You know, towards this end, which is where it's collected and hopefully goes in the overflow. That's not to say I don't have dead spots. You know, here's a definite dead spot. I've got, you know, stuff blocking stuff. In front of these shroom boxes, I definitely have some dead spots. So not 100% ideal, but I can vacuum that up pretty easily, so not a huge issue. Filtration-wise, pretty simple. I've got no baffles. This is just a big tank with a bunch of live rock. I do recommend baffles if you have a skimmer that's in tank. My skimmer is not, so water level doesn't really matter. I do have a skimmer, and then I've got a dual reactor. And I know a lot of people are going to hate me for saying this, but I would say a reactor with a phosphate absorber is going to do the vast majority of people more good than a protein skimmer. With the exception of fish onlys, of course. You know, I'm talking about reef. Or if you just you know, if you're one of those people that are just clumsy feeders, you don't know what things need to eat, and you feed too much, get a skimmer. You need a skimmer. But I have a lot of tanks I run without skimmers, and they run perfectly fine, and I run a phosphate absorber. If you have no phosphates, you tend not to have algae. So I have a pretty algae-free tank. I do have a decent cleanup crew, but I'm not scrubbing these frags or anything. It's pretty much algae-free because I have a phosphate absorber. Feeding, I feed Canna Cyclops, which I just did a review on. I feed that almost daily. I'll do mysis from time to time. I do heavy spot feeding with krill and rods food, as well as broadcasting rods food once a week. Big fan of rods food. Larry's Reef is also good, but, you know, I like rods. It's the original. They're pretty much identical. Not that they'll say that they're identical, so don't mean to get in trouble saying that. But anyways, I keep things very simple. So this tank, this is my high-end Zoa tank. Also very simple. I've got a hang on the back box that goes down to this sump. These are connected, these two tanks. I've got a Jabo PP4 in there, Jabo PP8 in here. Again, also very simple, very cheap. I wouldn't call this a deep sand bed, but this is a sand bed that I don't touch. I don't gravel vacuum. If I were to rake my hand through there, it would be disgusting. You'd see the nastiest stuff ever, and a lot of people would say that's not a great way to keep your tank. But the nice thing is, I've got a lot of anaerobic bacteria in there that breaks down nitrates. So I do very few water changes on here. Again, super, super simple. I keep it consistent. I do water changes. I do small water changes. They're always at the exact same time, time period. I have no skimmer. This sump, again, is just a tank. There's no baffles, no skimmer. I do have a phosphate reactor. Again, I do recommend that. I'm running GFO in these. GFO and rock 0.8 carbon. They're close to the same grain size, so they work really well in a reactor together. I'm keeping it simple. I don't dose. If I had a heavy SBS tank, I might dose. I might have a calcium reactor. Honestly, I do water changes consistently, and that's good enough with a good quality salt. This tank, these are new, so you know I can't say like I can show proof that I've had them for a long time and that they're consistent and all that stuff. But I'm doing the same thing I do in all my other tanks. I'm keeping it very simple. I've got a big, nice return pump. I'm gonna add some power heads. They're gonna be cheap PPs. Live rock. If I had more money, I'd go with Marine Pure just because it tends to be cleaner, and Marine Pure is awesome stuff. You know, biologically speaking, it can hold more good bacteria, but you know, it costs more, and I had Live Rock on hand, so I went with Live Rock. Actually, it might not even cost more. If you're looking square footage of real estate for bacteria, Marine Pure is probably cheaper, but I happen to have this, so I went with this. Heater-wise, I've got an Eheim in there. This titanium just sitting in there. That's not actually on. Eheims are cheap. I like titanium heaters. They're more expensive. If you want to know about heaters, watch the BRS video they just did. It's amazing. It goes the difference between digital thermostats and physical thermostats like the Eheim. Their recommendation is honestly what I'd go with. But again, very, very simple in my opinion. I will be adding a reactor to this manifold. That's the first. I'm going to do that today. After I shoot this video, I'm probably going to add a reactor. And then eventually I might put a protein skimmer. But the first thing I'm going to do is add a reactor because I swear to God, in my opinion, they just work better at neutralizing phosphates, and that tends to be the biggest problem. And I know people argue with that, but in my experience, if you have a reactor and you're not overfeeding, you're going to be fine. If you're doing water changes, now, if you're not doing water changes, you want a protein skimmer, because protein skimmers are going to reduce the total accumulated amount of nitrates and phosphates. If you're doing water changes and you're diluting that, not that big of a deal. But anyway, so yeah, I keep it real simple. My tanks do well. If I had a heavy SPS tank, I'd probably, you know, not do this one quite the same. I would have a heck of a lot more flow than a single PP8. Jabos, I think, are great power heads for the price you're paying. I'm not saying they're the best. You know, Ecotech, the MPs are awesome. For this tank, I should have and hope to get a Gyre Max Spec, the original. That'd be much more suited to this tank than the power head I have on here now. That being said, let's talk about power heads. Well, in this tank especially, I need gentle flow because I've got a lot of LPS that doesn't like super hard stuff. And I need gentle flow, but I still need a large volume of water being moved. So I have this turned down a little bit right now. Let me turn it up real quick. But I have this on pulse mode. Pulse mode's going to get the largest volume of water moving past a coral that's still being a gentle flow. Because you have a large volume of water moving back and forth. You know, think of a sloshing bucket. It's not blowing on it super hard, but it's getting the water moved. Not ideal for clearing the bottom of the tank of detritus, which is why I still have dead spots, you know, in the front, even with this turned up. But it does effectively get water moving. My mushrooms at the low end with, you know, lower flow corals. My acan's kind of in the middle, medium flow corals. These guys are still medium lower flow corals, but I've got some baffle, you know, I have some space in the front. These frags normally aren't here. I just cut these, so those will be moved into a different tank later. Flow on this one's pretty much the same. Again, if I was doing heavy SPS, I'd have a different flow regime. If I was doing heavy SPS, I'd be doing a lot of things different. But for most of the softies and LPS, you can go simple. I've got one power head and I've got the returns, and that's all I have in this tank. It's set up and established, doing really well for a long time. Might look a little different than last time I sold some pieces out of here. But, you know, pretty simple. This tank, very, very simple. I've got one power head. This is doing the same thing. It's going to pulse on, pulse off. I still like dynamic flow, so regardless, it would either be pulsing or a sine wave. I'm not just going to have a constant on power head. Feeding for all these pretty much the same. I do my Can-O Cyclops I do Fido Feast, I do Rod's Food, Hikari, Mysis. PE's just, you know, good or better. It's just going to pollute your water a little bit more. But yeah, I keep it really, really simple. Water change, I use reef crystals the majority of the time, but most of the quality salts you can kind of intermix. People freak out about changing salts. Salinity's a good one. Red Sea Coral Pro's a good one. I'm about to test a new BTAC Industries super cheap one, which supposedly is kind of like reef crystals. And I'll let you know about how that goes. Salinity wise, honestly, I'm not too picky. I go 1.022, which is kind of on the low side, to 1.026. Temperature 78. Ideally, you know, I've got this one at 78. I've got, this is the one I just tore down. This is going to be replaced, but this should be 78. This one over here is running at 77. This one here, we're looking at a little high today, 78.6. But typically 78, you know, 76 to 82, you're good. You're going to get a little faster growth in the higher temperatures, but you also get more algae growth. And if you're having disease, the disease tends to spread a little faster in the higher temperatures. But yeah, I keep it simple. I change out my GFO at least twice a month. And, you know, I do the carbon at the same time. Just a small amount of carbon. Doesn't cost me all that much. I don't dose. I don't test a whole lot. As long as my, you know, nitrates and phosphates are low, I'm good. I don't worry too much about my pH. I might get a faster growth rate if my pH was a little bit higher. These are probably running around 7.9, which isn't ideal. But again, I'm not too worried about it. My stuff grows fast enough. I'm not trying to, you know, be that guy jacking stuff up on steroids and fertilizers and making things grow super, super crazy fast. My things grow fast enough. They're super healthy. They look happy. I don't have algae, and that's good enough for me. So, I realize I've been twisting around in this video a little bit much. Hopefully not giving you guys motion sickness. But anyways, I hope that answers your question. Whoever posted it, I hope this, you know, video was helpful. These tanks I'm going to be lighting differently. I'm going to get some Kessel AP700s on these. I'm going to get 4 of them, so 2 per tank. This, if you're curious, this is a hybrid. This is a Kessel AP700 with 2 250 watt metal halides. These are Chinese black boxes, also going to be replaced with Kessels. These grow coral well. They're just ugly. Like, not the fixture itself, but the light it puts out, although this might look nice in the video. Ecotex, AIs, and Kessels, the top 3, and I'm sure Orphix are nice, but you don't see them in the US very much, so I've never used them myself. But the quality of light is just so much nicer. So I went with these on the cheap. I'm going to turn them into refugium lights, and I'm going to replace them with Kessels, because I like Kessels, and that's a whole different video on why I particularly like those of the 3 big brands. But they were my favorite. I like metal halides in combination also, but metal halides are very impractical. They're expensive to replace the bulbs. They burn hot, a lot of electricity. Anyways, that's a different video. So that's how I run most of my tanks. I hope you guys' tanks are doing well. I hope this was informational and you found it fun to watch. Hopefully some longer videos, because I freed up some space on my phone. Simple as that. Hope your tanks are doing well. See you guys later. Bye.